because we can't be face-to-face and we have to be doing it this way, I have the chat. So if you have questions as we go through, you can put the questions in the chat and I will answer them as we go. I have a couple spots along the way where I will stop and you can ask questions then too. All right, so what we're going to do today is talk about including students in the IEP process before they get to that transition stage. So before high school, even elementary, how do we get kids involved in the process? That's our goal for today. So what we're going to kind of go through is we're going to talk about self-determination. We're going to talk about how you include kids at elementary versus middle school versus high school meetings. A needs assessment, how you go about finding out information to use. How we work on having student-directed IEPs, from that pre-meeting, what can we put in place for kids to do before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting, and maybe come up with an action plan. Now, because this was originally scheduled to be face-to-face, I will kind of guide you along some of the activities that we were going to have planned. As we go through the information, kind of think of your action plan. Kind of who, what, when, how. You are going to think about including students, regardless of what age group you have. How are you going to include them in the IEP process? So however you want to make that look, if you just want to write it on a scrap piece of paper or whatever you have, what you think you could go back to your schools and say, hey, let's try this. Maybe it's only with a certain number of kids. Maybe it's just one kid that you think would do really well at something. Maybe you pick different things depending on the kids in your class. So just keep that in mind as we're going through. All right, I'm going to show you this short clip about kids explaining self-determination. Okay, hey, can you see that? Can you hear it? Okay, I know you can't hear the video. I wonder why it's not working because I can see it. Can you hear the video but not see it? Okay. Let me see. I don't know. Okay, well, I'll try to problem sheet that as we, I'll just move forward and then I'll come back to it if I can. Hold on, let me get my tech support. Okay, so we're just going to go on and I'll try to come back to it. Not a problem. Okay. Okay, so self-determination is, we know that it's believing in yourself. What can you do? How do you make plans for yourself? How do you take control of your own life? And even the littlest kids can tell you what they are good at, what they want to do. Okay, we all know if you want to be a fireman today, it doesn't mean that you're going to end up being a fireman, but at least they can realize that they have choices to make about the things that they do. Okay, we all do it. We all have self-determination in our lives. Okay, I'm skipping this down. So in an elementary meeting, does the student know what their disability is? Now, you will have some parents that don't want their student to know. They will tell you, don't tell him that he has a disability. I know that sometimes kids know, even if you don't spell it out. But if you can, after talking to the parents, depending on the age, help kids understand what their disability is. When I had students at the School for the Blind, we would talk about what their vision was so that they could explain it. And so they would have a knowledge that their vision was different than other people's vision. Okay, my tech support is here, so I'm going to go back and see if I can't get this so you guys can see it. Okay, so hold on.
To read more in school and stay on track of class and paying attention more.
Self-determination means to me that I can let my teachers know what I need and that I have autism and ADHD. And that when I'm mad, I can let them know that I need a quiet space so I can cool down and just have a little alone time, because it makes me feel a lot better, because I can think about what I can't do and what is not appropriate and what that is appropriate to do.
Self-determination means asking for help when you need help.
Self-determination means that I take care of my own hearing aids and I test them every day at Miss Temple's room in a book, and I go to the office and check them. I throw the batteries away and put new ones in, and it's really important so I can take care of them real good. Self-determination means to me raising my hand and asking to go to the resource room.
Self-determination means to me when I ask my mom and teacher if I can stay for tutoring, and when I come down to the resource room for help and quiet.
Self-determination means me going to my IEP meetings, listening to all the good things about what my mom, Miss Gray, and my teacher has to say about me. And my goals are to get out of speech by May, and for me to get out of speech, I have to practice my oral words.
Self-determination means I have trouble listening. I help myself. I ask my friends for help. I raise my hand. I ask if I can go down to the resource room.
Self-determination means to me setting goals for myself, like focusing in school, listening to my teacher, and listening to my mom. If I reach these goals, I reward myself by giving myself candy or extra iPod or TV time. I want to make good grades and pass. I want to graduate and have a career. I also want to make my parents proud of me too.
Okay. So as you see, all those kids were at different levels and they all understood what self-determination was for them. Even they all had a different level of understanding, all had a different level of being able to express it, but they all understood what they were working towards. And this is sometimes what I think we forget. We write goals, we plan, we do things, but we do it not in conjunction with the students, and we kind of leave them out. It's like stuff we're going to do for them to help them, but we don't really include them in the discussion. So that, I think, is the key point, that if you know what your goals are, kids can help. They understand. Right. Okay, well, let's see if it works again. Okay, so can you see the homepage of I'm Determined? Just to make sure I've got it working. Yes, yes, okay. All right, this is just a website, and I will send you the PowerPoint when I send you a certificate so that you will be able to have some of these resources. So you don't have to worry about it till then. This is a website where there is information on it. You can get different forms and things to show to kids. Here's just one for little kids. That's a one-pager where kids can, I don't want you to do that now. Where kids can talk about what they do well. They have a little overview for you that you can talk to them about. What are their strengths? What are their preferences? What are their interests? These are things that can help you, right? You can do this before a conference. You can talk to kids about these things to give them to give you ideas of how to best plan for them. Kids know what they do well. They know what they like. I have watched many a case conference where they're doing behavior plans, talking about what a kid will work for, and the kid has no interest in that. So this is just one thing. The site has a lot of different resources that you can use for families, for yourselves. Go away. Okay. So again, we're back to, does a student know their disability? Do they even know what an IEP is? I've been to conferences, for transition conferences, where we've asked the student if they know what their goals are, if they know why we're here. No, the answer is no. They don't know what their goals are. They don't know what the purpose of a transition is. They don't know what an IEP is. So this information you need to share with kids so that they know, what is it for? Your goals will be much better met if you have students that know what they're doing. If also have kids help you in their progress monitoring. If a student has a goal for decoding, have them keep a graph to show how many more words they can decode. That gives them a visual, that gives them the ability to see, wow, I'm progressing. You heard the little girl on the video talk about what she had to do for her speech, for her goals. And you heard the little kid that said they needed to practice their R words. So if they understand what they're supposed to do and what the purpose of it is to help them, that will help. When it comes to accommodations, this is another place. Accommodations, we decide all these different accommodations for kids, but sometimes we don't ask what works for them. And then you'll notice a kid will never use extra time. Extra time is one of those things that's on IEPs, in IEPs a lot. And kids don't ever use it. If they don't use it, do they really need it? What do they need? Some technology. Sometimes parents want, of course, you would want the best and the highest level of technology, but sometimes the kid isn't ready for it, or they don't like it. So it would help to use different things and talk to the kids about the technology and what helps them and what doesn't help them to be better able to meet their needs. Another issue is the idea of student dependence or independence. And it's hard. It's hard for any kid, for a parent, for little kids to say, oh yeah, my kid's going to be totally independent. So it helps if you can have students speak for themselves. What can they do? Hey, mom, this is what I'm working on. I want to do more of this. So kind of focusing that elementary skill on independence. That's what we're working for. Sometimes it's hard. And sometimes it's a balance with parents. So sometimes it has to be baby steps. Work on one thing. If it's just getting a student to understand what their disability is, check. Maybe then maybe you start with one goal. This is your goal. This is what we're working on. Does anybody have a question? Okay. So the idea is when you get to that transition stage, when kids start to come. Now, I know that a parent can say a student isn't going to be allowed to come to a case conference. And most of the time that's because they feel like there's going to be too much negative information. This is why from the very beginning, if you have the student coming, even for part of it, to talk about the positive things and to get some input, then the student is actually participating. They're giving input and they're participating. Those are two different things, because you could say a student is participating just by sitting there, but are they giving input? Can they advocate for themselves? And that's hard. And it's hard for kids to do with a bunch of adults. So practicing, being able to talk about it, those are things that kids need to learn how to do. When you think about it, if a student understands their accommodations, they also need to learn how to advocate for those accommodations. And they need to learn how to advocate to adults. If you learn how to do that in elementary school and learn different ways to advocate for yourself, it's easier when you get to middle school and high school, where kids sometimes find it difficult to appropriately ask for accommodations or to understand that they have the right to ask for the accommodations. Again, in those transition meetings, it's important to focus on a student's dependence. That's what we're all working for, to have as much independence as possible when you're done with K-12 education. Having students present for some or part of the meeting is really important. They can't just come, they have to have input. And I have to tell you, I have been to some conferences where the students have done an excellent job of advocating for themselves. Excellent. That you could tell they've done some work. So usually in an IEP meeting, this is just some facts that I found. Who participates? That's the people that are required to participate, your family members, your special educators, gen ed educators, administrators, the student, and who talks. You see, the student doesn't talk very much. And this kind of has to be upped, because trust me, they are thinking. If you sat back and watched students at a case conference that don't talk a lot, they are giving you verbal cues. They might shake their head, or they might roll their eyes, or they might just sit with their arms crossed, but they're just listening to things that people are going to do to them, what people think they're going to do to help them, but not what the students are willing to receive or understand why it's even being asked. See, teachers do the most, special educators do the most talking, so I think we need to give some of that up. So where do we start? So does anybody have any questions yet? Can anybody give me an idea in the chat of what do you do anything now to include students in their IEPs, or what do you do now? Or have you included students? Okay, then we'll just keep going. If you think of something, let me know. Okay, so just like anything else, there's a continuum. Obviously, you're not going to have a kindergartner oh, excellent, Kelsey. So here's the perfect oh, wow, that's a great idea, Michelle. Michelle says that she created a PowerPoint with a student to share with her new middle school. So that is a great way. That's a great way to introduce a student. Asking them questions. And I get it. Some junior high kids, it's hard to speak, especially if the parents have certain expectations. Sometimes it's hard for a student to speak up. That's why I'm advocating that even an elementary student can participate to try to help them so that when they get there, it is they do have the ability to speak up for themselves. And parents play a big role in that too, being positive and being supportive of students talking. Oh, okay. And Kelly, you have done student-led case conferences in the past. Right. Again, when you talk, I know that teachers in transition, those like middle school and the high school teachers especially, it does take a lot of time to prep a kid for directing their own case conferences. So again, that's why if I push it down, if we help the elementary, help the middle school before they're at that transition age, if we help them little by little participate, then it's less work for the high school teachers to try to move kids to self-directed IEPs or to help them prep, because they will know much of the process. And just like everything else, you kind of learn as you go. You get better and better and you learn more, and you go from an elementary level of understanding to that high school level of understanding. So those are excellent. So here's my continuum of student-directed IEPs. At one end, you have the IEP taking place without the student present. And at the other end, you have where the student actually leads and directs all aspects of the process. There's a lot of information in between there. And again, it doesn't have to be that they have to do it. We'll talk in a minute about ways student can participate in their IEPs without actually being present at their IEPs, which is sometimes what younger students can do. Again, it depends on their age, obviously their abilities and their needs. But as you can see, there's a lot of things in this continuum to work towards. So just keep that in mind. It's like anything else. It's a process and a continuation. So how do we think about how you can involve students? So you have to kind of think outside the box, how to involve students. I'm going to give you some ideas for before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting. Sometimes kids have a way. I've been in a couple case conferences where kids, even though they weren't leading it, they definitely had ideas what would be helpful for them and what was not helpful for them. That when presented, they did an excellent job. You could tell they had been prepped, not coached, because that would imply somebody was giving them direction, but just prepped on how to present their ideas. And they did a very good job. And it did help the case conferences go a little more smoothly. And actually things were put in that the student was like, yeah, I can do that. And I think I will make progress. So again, the idea that if you start in elementary school, you build that child's capacity to be able to then lessen the load of those high school, middle school teachers when it's transition time, because they have a better understanding of what the whole thing is about. So pre-meeting, meeting, post-meeting. First of all, you always have to include the parents. So I would do that before, even like at your parent teacher conferences or whatever you have at the beginning. Talk to the parents about their disability and the things that you would like to do in helping their child understand their disability, understand the IEP process, understand their goals. So I would start ahead of time. And then how are you going to, what kind of activities you're going to use to help them get there? So here's some ideas for you. You could have show kids that are older the IEP. Let's look, where are your goals? Here's your goals. Where's your behavior plan? Here's your behavior plan. Just depending on the age, some things about it that are there. Life course trajectory. What do you want to be? We're working towards, you know, helping you get to point B. So how are we going to get there? Talking with the kids about that so you get an idea of what they're thinking. Now, understand that these, depending on what level you have, you might do different ones of these. Sorry. The one pager that I showed you in that I'm determined, there's a one pager like, what are your strengths? What do you do well? So that if you get the information and you're talking to a second grader, maybe you just have them draw pictures or write in their own words what they do well, and you take that information to the case conference and present it. This is what Susie said about herself. If you have older kids, what's the goal plan? Well, you know, yes, the kid could say, I did really well on this goal, but not so much on this one. I think I need to work more on this. An iMovie. I think these are really fun. I did have an example, but I don't know, I deleted it somehow. So, but you all have, probably those of you that have a phone have an iMovie capability on your phone, and just doing like little clips, maybe I've seen them where they did something that the kid was really doing positive and really proud of, and little snippets throughout the year that the kid did positively that they then put music to, and they could show that at the beginning of the case conference. Maybe the student's there, maybe they're not, but here is their information. Here's an example of what the student has accomplished. Sometimes that's really, it can start the meeting out in a really positive way to show what the kid is doing well, what challenges they have met, what the kid is proud of, what your student is proud of what they have accomplished. Sometimes little kids can just make name tags. Who's going to be at the conference? You know, a name tag for mom, dad, grandma, whoever. So maybe make name tags or have them add a personal note to the invites, and help them set up the room or help them arrange the room if it's an older kid who's going to sit where. So these are just kinds of things you can do ahead of time with a student to help them. And it seems like time, but you could make it part of whatever you're going on in your class. The one pager, if you give it to a student to work on during an English class, maybe here, you know, write sentences. You could incorporate this into activities that you already do in class. Okay, I deleted it somehow. Okay, here's a couple of more resources. The I'm Determined, I've already showed you. The life course tools are for more older kids. So it's more of that trajectory of what do you want to do, so this is what the first page looks like. It has all sorts of resources on it. So it's kind of the idea of, I'm here, where do I want to go? What do I want to be? How can I get there? What do I need to get there? For older students, what kinds of supports do I need to do what my goal is for life? Okay, so the IEP meeting. Okay, so kids, you're prepared. It's time to go to the meeting. And it's going to be nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking at first for kids, especially if you think of some of those kids with a lot of service providers and a lot of people there. So it sometimes helps to have all the people from the school that are going to be there kind of encourage and say, yes, we're going to be there, but we're supporting you and you have good thoughts. So you're just going to have to be able to speak them. We'll support you. So you don't want to, you need to be organized. You need to let everybody know the student is coming so that everybody is prepared for the meeting. Prepared. So if you need to go over a draft with a student, you need to go over the draft. You can see here, kids are knowing the different parts and they're practicing leading their conferences. You can have them role play when they're younger, or sometimes if you have little kids come in, elementary age, 4th or 5th graders, to talk about their strengths, then they can leave. Or maybe you're going to have them come in and talk about one of the goals that they have met, and to talk about what they want to work on next, and then leave. All right. So it's about including the student, even the ones with more challenging students. If some of your students have have less communication and they have switches, maybe yes, no, maybe you could practice some questions and so that they understand how to answer yes or no in order to give some input. So while you're in the meeting, again, they could do the introductions. They could introduce everybody at the meeting because they obviously would know their parents and whoever else is with their parent. They can highlight, again, their accomplishments. Older kids can talk about maybe they're involved in something at school, so they can talk about what they're doing in a club or a sport, or if there's like some places have like the coffee shop, if students are involved in those things, this is a perfect time to come and explain to people. If they're a smaller child, maybe they're talking about their one pager and their strengths and challenges, or their trajectory. What are the things that we have in place? What do I need put into place? And these things can change. I know some of you, if you look at accommodations, sometimes the kids have had the same accommodations forever. And it's a matter of, what do you really need? What will really help? And what do we need for right now to delete? Do you guys have does anybody else have any other ideas of ways to include kids in the meeting? Or how you get input for like behavior plans and what kids will do? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Even if you just thought of the idea right now, put it in of ways you think you could help students participate in their meetings. So, and Michelle, so I'll just ask you a question too. So you said that you make the PowerPoints, which I think is an awesome idea. Do you ever think about having the students make a PowerPoint to share with the committee. Oh, that's okay. So having the kids say what their concerns are. Absolutely. Anything else? Oh, awesome. So she presented her PowerPoint. That's a great idea. And again, these are sometimes the things like a PowerPoint or the one pager, or like if you have a student who is keeping track of their own kind of progress monitoring on a graph, you can incorporate those things into whatever you're working on. It doesn't have to be like in a separate activity, obviously. I mean, if you're making a PowerPoint, if you think of all the things that you have to do that, yeah. And again, it doesn't just have to be your kids. It could be all of your kids. How does everybody feel like they're doing well or what they need? But you can incorporate those things into your everyday lesson plans. If all the kids are writing, this is what a student with an IEP might write about. And again, having kids speak all the time, I know that it's hard, and I wasn't one to always be able to talk in front of people. So the more that you get students to talk in front of their peers and in front of other people, the easier it is going to be for them to talk in front of a group of adults, which sometimes, as you know, there are a lot of people at those meetings. So speaking in front of adults sometimes is really, really difficult. So, and they kind of get tongue-tied. So it's practice. So again, sometimes I know if you have kids give presentations in your class, that helps. That helps them have to stand up in front of people, even if it's sharing a little thing, current events, show and tell, talking about what the book meant to them, or presenting a project that they have created. All those things, being able to talk in front of adults, being able to talk in front of their peers, helps them actually be able to present when they get into a case conference. Has anybody ever done anything and got a lot of pushback from parents? Because I know that sometimes even students that are at transition age, parents do not want their students at the conference. So again, it goes to trying to find those positives to have a student come and present. And just like the rest of us, the more they do it, the more parents are accustomed to having their students at the case conferences and presenting, and little by little coming more and more helps. Anything else? Oh, okay. So like Kelsey's comment about, and I've had this problem too, that they weren't allowed to talk to their student about their IEP since they didn't know they had one. So again, that's where you have to work more with the parent. And what I would say is, okay, even if you don't talk to a kid specifically about their IEP and that they have an IEP, even though I'm pretty sure the student does know that they somehow have different learning skills than other kids, then I would just like overall talk to all the kids about what do you think you do well? I mean, if you make it that, then you can take that information without actually talking to the kid about it. If you can take information from the kid to the IEP meeting without specifically telling the kid that's what it's for, right? You always ask kids, how's maybe you ask your whole class, what's everybody thinks the best thing that they know how to do? What thing's the hardest for you to do? If you do it with everybody as a group project, you don't have to specifically identify a student. But again, I don't know how old your student is, Kelsey, but I would say that's conversations you have to have with a parent slowly, that at some point the student needs to know so that they can help you work on it. But again, if you did things as a whole group, so you can kind of get, you can even say when you go to the meeting to the parent, hey, we did this class project. Here's what your child said. Here's what they say their strengths are. Here's what they say their challenges are. Just to help. And truthfully, any group of kids, if you are doing anything to when you talk about progress monitoring, not so much progress monitoring per se, but having kids keep track of things that they do. All the kids, maybe they read, they keep track on a graph of how many books they read or how many words they read, right? And if everybody in the class is doing it, then you have information that that kid is doing, and you can show a parent how well they're doing. It's not just your information, but that kid can share with their parents, oh, look, I've read, 10 more pages than everybody else in my class. So that's what I would say, because I know there are those parents that really struggle with the idea of an IEP and somehow don't want their child to know. That is going to be a slower process than those that are accepting of the fact that their student has challenges and want to help them move forward. But anything you can do as a whole group to kind of bring information back is a good idea. But again, you have to be sure that you do it to the whole group, so parents don't say you're just trying to get information out of their kid. But does anybody else have any problems? Like that? Or any ideas? Okay. So after the meeting, oftentimes I have like a little, I used to have a little survey that said, okay, so what went well, what didn't go so well, and to kind of get an idea of what people thought about it when I started having smaller students or younger students, I guess, come into their conferences, and ask the parents how they thought it went. Sometimes I would have the kids write a thank you note to say, hey, thanks, Mom and Dad, for coming. Sometimes I had the kids make a little certificate like everybody gets for the time they've spent that says, this is my IEP certificate and you get one because you came. All those things make for more positive outcomes, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I would always ask, because again, if you get input, it helps change the process going forward. Maybe a student says, hey, I really like doing this. I would like to add this next time. Can I do this too? I didn't like leaving. Can I do this? I mean, and kids have to learn that, okay, it's not just getting out of class, right? It's not just getting out of class and sitting in this meeting with adults. You actually have to participate. So you have to be prepared, just like the adults, in order to participate. So sometimes that's hard. Sometimes that's hard. And I have had parents that are fine with their students participating, but then at some point they're like, nope, kid has to go. Maybe because the parent wants a certain something that they don't know if the kid will like or not. They just don't want the kid to be involved in the conversation. Maybe they think it's going to be contentious, so they want the student to go. And that's okay too. But again, the elementary kids are going to have a different take on it. But again, their information about how they thought it went is just as important, even if they can't always verbalize it as well as the older kids can. And some older kids really want to lead their whole thing, but they need to work up to that. Has anybody have actually had kids run the whole thing? I know people have before, but I've never been to one where the student actually ran the whole thing from beginning to end. Close, but not actually the whole thing. But if you had, I would love to hear about it. So you can type in a message if you actually have had kids participate in the whole thing. Okay, so my next question is, has any of this information given you any ideas when you think back to your action plan of maybe what you're doing now, how you could add to it? Have you gotten any new ideas? If you have, what would they be? What would be one thing you could go back and try? And again, if you don't have, if you're in middle school and you think of ideas that you wish that the kids knew before they got to you, how do you put that in information for an elementary teacher to say, hey, maybe your kids could do this? And again, it does depend on the grade and it does depend on the disability. Obviously, there are kids that are going to be better able to do this, better temperament, better cognitive ability, better verbal abilities. But every kid can somehow participate in some way. I know you can adapt something. So has anyone tried to adapt for different levels or different abilities of kids? Or any ideas? Okay. So we go back to the action plan and any questions that you have. So again, think about what you do now as far as students and their IEPs, and what one thing could you add to try to get students more involved in their IEPs. Another thing I would say about can you hear me now? Okay, I don't know what happened. Sorry about that, ladies. Okay, so what I was saying is, has anybody thought of something different or new that they could do, or help to add kids to their IEPs? And what I was starting to say was that as an adjunct professor at IU, I have had students with disabilities, and it's their responsibility to let me as a professor know what their accommodations are. So there again, I can tell the ones that I've had that have had practice in stating what their disability is, going to the Office of Disabilities, and they have written the information that I needed in order to help them and what those accommodations are. I've had others that have struggled more with it, and I can tell they haven't had as much practice on explaining their disability or their accommodations of what they need. But again, it goes to the fact that they didn't just start it when they went to college. They've been working on it over time. So did any of this give anybody new ideas? Let me know what your new ideas are when you think about what you are doing now and how you might add something or how you might help your colleagues that are with younger kids to include those students in their IEPs. Awesome. Okay, excellent. Yeah, and again, if you think about it, anytime you are engaged in what the process is, it helps you understand it. So again, we have to start thinking these goals and this information in this IEP are things that involve a student. And if they understand those things, that will help them be able to accomplish more. So, all right. Well, thanks for your responses. I appreciate you. I wish we could have a conversation in person maybe someday. But again, yes, keep it simple for the little ones. Again, the continuum, the little ones, simple, something easy. And again, I think it will help with the adults, the parents too, to see how their students respond. Okay. So we have two scan me's. One is for the evaluation for today's training on the left. On the right is for any that will go to our professional learning tab. If you want to attend a different training, all our information, the online evaluation, you will be getting certificates from me, and I will also send you the PowerPoint. And that certificate will be for your training, just like always from the IEPRC. So I will be sending those out before the end of the week. So you will have those. This is me. If you have any questions or would like some additional resources, you can either give me a call or email me. And here are all the resource centers. This will be at the end of your PowerPoint. Our information and our websites and our social media. And here, lastly, are all the other resource networks that can give you information. So I'll go back to here just so to be sure you have that information. Does anybody have any questions? Any other information they want to share? Oh. All right. Then if there aren't any other questions, then everybody have a nice rest of your day.